What are the most important closing documents to buy or sell real estate? Immediately, there's one easy answer, and that's the deed, right? That's the big daddy. It conveys title from the seller to the buyer. It has to be correct. It's got to be the right format. We have to list the correct type of deed. We have to make sure that the names are correct, the addresses are correct, and that the buyer's tenancy is listed correctly. A deed can't usually be changed after a closing, so it's very important we get it right the first time. If you want to add your wife after the closing, what you really need to do is get a whole new deed. You can't just correct that old deed usually. It's also good to remember that the seller is signing this document and that it's notarized. Then it gets recorded. So if I am a buyer, I don't have to actually sign this document, but it's actually still the most important document for me because it's giving me title. So I want to make sure I look at that document and make sure that all of my information is correct. So what's our next most important documents? Probably the mortgage and note. If I'm a buyer and getting a mortgage, right? I could buy this cash and there is no mortgage and note. So what are these documents? Well, the note is actually the personal responsibility to repay the lender. So if I'm a buyer and I sign that note, I'm agreeing to personally repay that lender, whether it's through a judgment or something else. The mortgage is the other half of that agreement, and it's my agreement with the lender that they get to use this property as collateral, which means if I don't pay, they don't have to, their only option isn't just to sue me, they can also foreclose this property to try to make themselves whole. So you got our two big documents, our deed and our mortgage and our note. So what's next on the list of importance? Probably statements, right? So our statements are those numbers documents, right? This is where we're going to say, this is the sales price. These are all the things the seller is paying. These are all the things the buyer is paying. And so this is how much money the seller is going to get at closing. And this is how much money the buyer needs to bring to closing. So statements are a pretty big deal, right? I mean, I think most of us care a lot about how much this house is going to cost us or how much money we're going to make. So we definitely want to take a look at our statements. There's also a statutory version of these called a closing disclosure. If you're getting a federally backed mortgage, you'll have statements and then you'll have the standard version, which is a closing disclosure as well. So that's probably about the same level of importance. Then we start to get into some more federally required documents, our tax documents, right? So we have our IRS requirements for capital gains reporting. Our seller is going to sign a 1099-S, maybe a certificate for no reporting. This is just to report that sale to the IRS. We've got to address that. So of course, we're going to have documents for it. And in that same kind of category are our FIRPTA exemptions. We've got a whole video on FIRPTA, so we won't get into that here. But basically, if the seller doesn't want to make a huge withholding payment to the IRS at closing, they're going to try to be fitting into one of those exemptions, which of course have to be documented. And then we're going to move into more of the state, city, municipal tax documentation, such as our property transfer affidavit. So this is required by the assessor so that the assessor knows who now owns the property. So the buyer is responsible for filling in and submitting that property transfer affidavit. They're going to give it to the municipal assessor, and it's going to tell the assessor who gets that tax bill. So sorry, buyer, that's going to be you. But the good news is we also have our principal residence exemption, which if you qualify for a principal residence exemption, you can file that with your assessor as well, and it will give you a little bit of a discount on those property taxes. And the seller has a sister document to that as well. They have a request to rescind a principal residence exemption. So the seller obviously doesn't own the property anymore. They probably want to claim that principal residence exemption on another property. So they would file that document with their assessor. From there, we do also have documents from our lender, which are most of the ancillary documents that the buyer is going to sign a couple times. couple of those lender documents might need to be signed by the seller, but these are the requirements by the federal government and by the lender's underwriters so that the buyer can actually get that money for the closing. So they are pretty important. So now you can be educated and know what you are signing. As always, if you have questions about your closing documents, call our specialists at Legacy Title Agency and let us help demystify your closing experience.